This is Screw Crime, faceless facts, sinister stories. And in this episode, your narrator, forrestjob, pulls back the veil on a monster who hid in plain sight for over 4 decades. You've heard of Bundy, Dahmer, and Gacy, but you probably haven't heard of Samuel Little, and that's by design. He didn't want fame. He didn't write letters. He didn't need a spotlight. He simply roamed America, strangling vulnerable women, disappearing before anyone could look twice. By the time he was caught, it was too late for dozens, possibly hundreds. He wasn't just a killer. He was a ghost with a pulse. And this is his story. Screw Crime Story, Samuel Little, The Eyes of a Ghost. Childhood of Shadows. Samuel Little was born on June 7, 1940, in Reynolds, Georgia. His mother was a sex worker, his father unknown. Raised primarily by his grandmother in Lorain, Ohio, he grew up poor, angry, and invisible to the world. He struggled in school not because he wasn't smart, but because he couldn't sit still. His mind was somewhere darker. From a young age, Little developed a fascination with violence and power. He was obsessed with women's necks, fixated on their vulnerability. By his teens, he was already committing petty crimes, theft, assault, breaking, and entering. The system caught him early, but it never kept him. He bounced in and out of juvenile halls, jails, and prisons. What he learned in each: how to manipulate, how to vanish, how to charm just long enough to survive. But behind those calm eyes and grandfather-like smile was something lethal. By the early 1970s, Samuel had begun what would become a cross-country killing spree. No headlines, no fanfare, just strangulation after strangulation. The women he targeted were mostly black, poor, drug-dependent, or sex workers. They were women the system already treated like ghosts, and Samuel knew it. He didn't use guns. He didn't use knives. He didn't leave blood. His weapon of choice: his hands. He would knock them unconscious, then squeeze the life from them, slowly, methodically. And then he would drive away, sometimes to another city, sometimes to another state. The bodies, sometimes found, often not. The police, rarely interested. Anatomy of a predator. Samuel Little had a strategy. He lived like a drifter, no fixed address. He drove junky cars across state lines, slept in motels, ate in diners, and stalked vulnerable neighborhoods under the cover of darkness. He rarely killed in the same place twice. He was arrested dozens of times across more than a dozen states for theft, assault, drug possession, shoplifting, but never for murder. Why? Because nobody cared to connect the dots. The women he killed were almost always written off as overdoses, accidents, or no foul play suspected. Coroners didn't investigate. Detectives didn't dig deeper. Media didn't report. Samuel was invisible, but not because he was hiding, because his victims were. The world didn't want to see them, so no one saw him. And Samuel knew this. He bragged about it years later. They was broke and nobody cared, he said. I did them a favor. He would find women, lure them with charm or drugs or just the promise of a warm car, and then he'd strike, usually at night, always quick. He'd dump bodies in back alleys near highways or deep in rural woods. He'd wash up in a motel, eat breakfast, and hit the road, on to the next city, the next woman. He killed for the feeling, for the control, for the way it made him feel alive. And every time he strangled someone, he felt godlike. cracks in the silence. For decades, his name barely surfaced. He was just another career criminal, no different than 1,000 others. But in 2012, that changed. He was arrested in Kentucky on a drug charge and extradited to California for an outstanding warrant. There, the LAPD matched his DNA to 3 unsolved murders from the late 1980s. The victims had been strangled, left in alleys, dumped like garbage. Little denied everything, but his past was catching up. Eventually, he was tried in 2014. The jury found him guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life without parole. But here's where it gets even darker. In 2018, a Texas Ranger named James Holland visited Little in prison. Holland wasn't there to prosecute, he was there to listen. And Samuel, he wanted to talk. He confessed, not to 3, not to 10, but to over 90 murders. And he remembered every single one, their faces, where he met them, how he killed them, what they were wearing. He even drew portraits of dozens of them from memory. His recall was terrifyingly accurate. The FBI launched a full investigation. As of now, over 60 of his confessions have been verified, making Samuel Little the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. Portraits of the Forgotten. The most horrifying part? Most of America still doesn't know his name. Why? Because his victims were invisible to society. They didn't have documentaries. They didn't have best-selling books. They didn't have headlines. But Samuel remembered them. His hand-drawn portraits were sent across the country. Some women were identified. Others, still Jane Does. He'd recall details from 30 years ago like it was yesterday. The color of a woman's eyes, the smell of her perfume, the way her body went limp. It was as if each murder had carved itself into his brain, and still he felt no remorse. None. To the end, he saw himself as something other than evil. A collector, an artist, a man who had outsmarted the system for decades. He didn't just kill, he hunted. He chose victims who couldn't fight back and a society that wouldn't follow up. The final breath. Samuel Little died on December 30th, 2020, in a California prison. He left behind hundreds of unanswered questions, dozens of unsolved murders, and a legacy of silence. He didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be free. And for over 40 years he was. He never kept trophies. He didn't film his kills. But the images were always with him, in his mind, in his hands, and eventually in his pencil drawings. He was never a household name. And that was the point. His power wasn't just in his strength. It was in knowing that America didn't care enough to stop him, not until it was too late. Summary. How did Samuel Little get away with it? He chose society's most neglected victims. Police didn't prioritize missing black women, addicts, or sex workers. He kept moving. No fixed location made it hard to link the crimes. He avoided digital footprints, killing before the tech boom. He committed bloodless crimes. Strangulation left little forensic evidence. He was charming and manipulative, able to evade suspicion and gain trust. Question time. Why did the justice system ignore so many missing women? Could the FBI have caught him sooner if they had listened to early survivors? What role did race and class play in Samuel Little staying free? How many more are still out there like him? Should his portraits be displayed publicly or hidden away? Answer these questions in the comments. Let's talk about it. Support the Screw Crime mission. If this story moved you or made you think, support this work. CashApp, $forrestjob. PayPal, A Divine Destiny, llc@gmail.com. Suggest the next killer or case in the comments. Share this episode with a friend who loves dark history. Subscribe so you never miss a new drop from the faceless files of true crime. This is Screw Crime, and I'm Forrest Job. Stay dangerous.